Welcome everyone to our second episode for this year, 2026. And here, Put Me On, we talk about all things career and corporate. I'm your host, Orife Daniel. And today we'll be talking about how to build a career that it's meaningful and that matters. And we have a special guest who will be helping us do that, sharing her personal experiences. She's a public health leader, career coach, and two-time founder, and she has a lot of valuable insights I think we can learn from her. And without further ado, we just want to welcome you to the episode. Olivia, thank you so much for your time. And if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do and something that is exciting to you currently in your career?
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Oreo Faye, and thank you to put me on for having me as a guest today. I really appreciate it. My name is Olivia Umoren Ezeuko, and I'm the founder of Live Consulting and Career Services. We are a career and leadership development firm based in the Washington, D.C. area, and we primarily focus on public health and health policy. So we work with individuals, academic institutions, nonprofits, corporate companies for the purposes of providing comprehensive career support or leadership development workshops that can support people in advancing in their careers. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, though I am Nigerian by blood. And I am very prideful in that. And I've kind of done a lot of different things throughout my career. Like many people that wanted to come into the public health space, I wanted to go to medical school. And I spent a large part of my undergrad and post undergrad preparing for that. But I quickly found and realized that that was not the path for me. And actually, one of the doctors that I worked with in one of my jobs at Mass General in Boston, she was actually the one that introduced me to public health at 25. And that's when I found out about the George Washington Master of Public Health program, and they had a concentration called community oriented primary care. And I thought, I think this is the closest thing to medical school that I'm going to get to. So I ended up coming to DC for that and then found health policy. But actually, the business was born at GW because I was having a lot of conversations with my classmates. And I came into the master's program a couple of years after I graduated undergrad. So I was older, just a couple of years older than most of my classmates. So I had more of an understanding of what I wanted to get out of the program. But I found myself having conversations with my classmates about how they could also get to that space where they knew what they wanted to do, how to get jobs after, resume, job interviews, things like that. And I've always enjoyed doing this, and that was really where the business was actually born. So I'm also someone that wears a lot of different hats. During the day, I also work as a director of public policy, advancing aging policy in DC. So I work with congressional offices and individuals in the administration to ensure that older adults in this country are able to age well at home and in their communities. And I'm also the founder of Black and Health Policy, or co-founder of Black and Health Policy, which is a dynamic group of Black health policy professionals in the DMV dedicated to expanding the leadership pipeline of Black policy professionals and also influencing health policy. So I will stop there, but thank you again for inviting me onto this today.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a very concise and nice introduction. Okay. So just going straight into the conversation, I think sometimes, we see people on LinkedIn and we're like, okay, what's their backstory? So tell me a little more about young Olivia and like what did you envision yourself becoming? And it's a career, career trajectory you had, was it kind of what you expected? And can you speak more about that?
Sure. I will say the career trajectory was definitely not what I expected, but I do not regret it. So that let's make that clear, because I think a lot of people, they have an idea of what their career should look like, and when they're actually in it, it may look different from how they had it in their minds. So I will say young Olivia was always very ambitious. I always knew I wanted to be successful and I was going to be successful, but what that looked like, it was different than what I had in my mind. So, like I mentioned earlier, my plan was to go to medical school. I was wanting to become a doctor. That was my goal since very young, maybe since 7 or 8 or so. My goal was to become a physician. And that was largely because I also had members in my family, like other people do, where I was seeing them as physicians and that was one of the few career options that I was exposed to. And also, just in the Nigerian community, it was one of the key jobs that people talk about when you want to have a solid income and you want to have kind of a recession proof job. Doctor is it. So the more I got to learn about it, I got excited, but it wasn't something where I truly felt passionate about enough to go through all of the years of medical school. So going all the way back to undergrad, I went to Penn State for undergrad. And originally I went in as a biology major because I thought if I'm going to medical school, I might as well just do biology. That's what makes sense. But I had my biology professor, I remember he sat me down and he was like, "Why did you pick biology?" And I told him what I just said. It makes sense. That's what I want to do for medical
Mm-hmm.
school. And he was like, "Well, you're not going to stand out that way. So if you don't want to do biology, I would recommend you pick something else that even if you don't go to medical school, it can still be utilized." And till this day, that was probably one of the best advice that I've ever received as an undergrad, because he was right. A biology degree, unless you're planning to go into, honestly, at this point, I don't even, unless you're planning to be a teacher of biology, or be kind of like a biological scientist or something like that, which I had absolutely no interest in doing, then a degree in biology is not really going to serve you well. So I took his advice and I started looking at the other options that I had. And I came across nutrition and I said, nutrition is interesting. It's something where I can learn and also apply this information to my life. And even if I don't plan to go to medical school, I can still pivot my career and consider being either a registered dietitian or nutritionist or working in, let's say, a WIC office or something like that. So I knew that the nutrition avenue would give me some more options. So finished that, struggled through organic chemistry, and then I was like, I took it 3 times. Okay. I'm not ashamed to say that, because that class
Seriously.
really kicked me. It kicked me like it did a lot of other people. And after I graduated from Penn State, I moved back home to Boston. And that's where I started my job as a clinical research coordinator at Mass General Hospital. And I worked on Alzheimer's and dementia research there. So, like I mentioned, that was where I was introduced to a doctor that actually told me, "Hey, you can consider public health." I say that this pivot happened not just like that. I took the MCAT twice. I applied to post-bac programs. I shadowed doctors, as in I watched several live births in the room and watched open heart surgeries because I thought that this was going to be my career. And I did all of that just to pivot and not do it and consider public health. So even the public health entry point for me look different than what I originally planned, because I came in wanting to kind of do more primary care adjacent work and then got introduced into health policy. And health policy was something that I had never ever touched before in my life. And the classes at GW, they piqued my interest. And the more classes I took, the more interested I was in that particular area. And that's what I ended up doing as my career now. So it was not a linear path at all. I had to do a lot of trial and error, talk to a lot of people, but also just trust myself and kind of go with what my interests were at the time. Like I said, I don't regret my trajectory. It didn't come out the way that I planned, but I wouldn't change anything about it.
That's really sweet. Because I also was a biology major. And I was like,
Biology majors, join the chat now. Join the chat.
medicine is not for me. Well, I
Yeah.
think I realized that a little too late, but
Yeah.
it all worked out, and right now I'm in public health. But something you talked about that I feel like was interesting was like knowing where to let go of something. I think,
Hmm.
our audience here in the students, early career professionals, how do they, somebody is wondering, like, how do I know, like, when to let go of something and when to take something? What kind of, I guess, advice would you have for that?
I would say listen to yourself and pay attention to how your body reacts to things. A major turning point for me was when I realized, when people were asking me, "So are you excited for medical school? How is it going?" My stomach would drop and I would immediately feel dread. I was not excited. I was not looking forward to it. There was nothing about it that I felt like, yeah, this is what I should be doing. And if I didn't listen to that, and instead, if I went with well, this is the path that I chose, so I have to stick with it. I promise you, I would be a very miserable person today because I didn't listen to those cues. I don't think that your career needs to be something that every day you wake up and you're like, yay, I can't wait to do this, because I don't do that in my everyday job. Do I like it? Yes. But every job, every career is going to have its challenges. However, what I will say is making sure that you pick a career path that aligns with you is very important. And I would also say, specifically for anybody who is either first generation, or your parents came here, or even if you're based in Nigeria and Ghana or in other countries, a lot of the challenge that we have is when you're trying to make that pivot, sometimes our parents don't understand that pivot. I'm thankful and I'm grateful that my parents trusted me. They trusted me as the first daughter. They were like, yeah, Olivia knows what she's doing. It's okay. So I didn't get any pushback from them. They've always been very supportive. But I've heard from a lot of other people that their parents were a little hesitant. And it makes sense when you're thinking about, especially if your parents have made the sacrifice to come here, left the family, left a lot of things back home. They want to make sure that you are guaranteed success. And those three things we always talk about: doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those three career options are usually the ones that can guarantee that, and they're recession proof. But what I will say is, when you're trying to have these conversations with your parents, it's important to show them how much you can do in the field. And I hope that we can get a chance to talk about this more, but this is really something that we pride ourselves in at Live Career Services, is exposing people to non-traditional public health career pathways. So that means not just the CDC, not just a local public health department, not just the community health organization, but careers in, let's say, Fortune 500, 100 companies, where with you as an MPH degree holder, you can make a three, four, $500,000 a year salary. You can make even more than a physician in public health, and that's a possibility. So understanding, one, what you want is very important, and then the second part is making sure that you also understand what you can do in the field for the purposes of your understanding and for the purposes of having that conversation with your parents as well.
Thank you so much for that. I think I relate a lot to a lot of what you said. But yeah, so kind of switching topics now. Let's kind of talk about growth. Something I noticed on your LinkedIn was, you had a lot of public speaking engagements. You were either in large or small groups speaking to other leaders or colleagues. Was public speaking something you grew into, or something you kind of just had? Yeah.
I would say maybe it's something that maybe it was a combination of both, actually. I've always been a pretty decent public speaker, and I remember being at 18 and doing a speech for graduation for a leadership camp that I went to. And I remember being comfortable on the stage, being comfortable speaking with people, being comfortable speaking to a large audience. And I don't know if I ever thought of myself as a public speaker at that time, but now I definitely do, just because I do it so much. But I enjoy it. I think it's something fun to me. I enjoy being able to almost engage with so many people at once, whether it's a room of 5 people or a room of 500 people. I don't think that public speaking has ever been something that I go up and I'm like shaking in my boots. Maybe I'll have like a little bit of, oh, I'm doing it right now. But outside of that, it's something that has been natural for me. And I've really honed into that natural ability. And I enjoy public speaking and I welcome it. So I don't, to answer your question, I don't think I ever planned to be a public speaker, but rather it's something that just naturally came to me over time.
That's really nice, because I think you're a really good one. But
Thank you.
also, kind of in your career, just looking generally, what's something else you also had to grow into? Because I think a lot of, listeners or audience right now are thinking, there are a lot of things like, they're probably scared of public speaking, for example, is a huge fear for a lot of people.
Mhm.
What's something else that you had to grow into, and that what helped you, grow into it?
That's a great question. And I will say this: anything that I say here in terms of my skill, I'm always a work in progress. I always like to improve any way that I can. So even though I just told you, I know I'm good at public speaking, but I know I can improve as well. So that's something that I'm trying to work on. But I will say, One thing that I struggle is probably too hard of a word, or too strong of a word, but I would say the confidence piece. And I don't mean internal confidence, but rather maybe how that confidence is showcased in the workplace, I should say. And I will say that there's different types of confidence levels. Like if I'm talking to a group of people, I don't have any issues with that. Or, I can walk into a room and not feel scared or like I don't belong. But I think as you move up in your career, the type of people that you meet, the type of conversations that you have, there's a different type of skill that's needed to engage in those conversations to have the impact that you want. And I know that kind of sounds maybe a little bit like gibberish, but that is, being in the DC area, that is something that I have continuously worked on and I'm still working on it because it will force you to kind of look yourself in the mirror and you got to ask yourself, are you able to kind of make your case in a short period of time? Are you able to make maximum impact with minimum time? And something like that, you have to also have the confidence in it. There's a lot of times where people will go in, they have the internal confidence, but the way it's delivered, people are not getting that. So I would say that's something that I am still working on, something that I had to learn along the way of delivery and how to maximize your impact when having conversations with people.
That's really good. I think what I hear is like having a growth mindset, really, because you
Hmm.
have to be able to start from somewhere and then,
Yeah,
like, everyone is a work in progress and grow into whatever your career requires of you, honestly. So, yeah,
exactly.
that's really good. So, you kind of talked about how, like, you've transitioned from, nutrition to your master's in community oriented care and then to policy. I know you talked a bit about, transitioning to policy. I was just curious, even from a public health perspective, was that intentional or organic, or was it just the classes that kind of inspired that?
It was intentional, I would say. I came into the master's program and like I said, I wanted to do primary care adjacent work, but I was introduced to health policy in those classes and I immediately knew that that's what I wanted to do for my career. So I had to figure out how to take my very research focused resume and translate it into a policy resume. And that was not done by myself. I had people look at my resume. I had a friend, and I always mention her for this, Ryan Hill. She always was there to just give me advice and guidance on how I could break into the health policy field. And that is really what community is for. And now she's on the leadership team of the organization that I just mentioned, Black in Health Policy, and we're doing really great work together. I say that because it's really important for people to understand what is needed in order to make a transition. So if you're trying to transition from, let's say, the clinical field to health tech or something like that, you have to talk to people who are in that field to give you the guidance that will help you to be successful. Could I have done it by myself? Sure. Would I have been able to have the level of success that I do now in the time period that I did? Probably not. It would have taken me a lot longer if I didn't have anybody to reach out to, if I didn't have conversations with people. I was reaching out to any and everybody. And these were people who were formerly at, let's say, consulting firms who ended up being, let's say, President Biden appointed officials in the administration. And that's also another thing in the DC area and just generally, you never know where people are going to go. So I always emphasize, please focus on networking. Networking is going to be the thing that saves you. It's not going to be your degree. It's not even going to be your skill. Sometimes it's not even going to be like what you know here, but it's going to be who you know. And that is going to be the major part of your success. So I will say that was what helped with my transition. And the first role that I had in health policy was actually a maternal and child health fellowship. And I remember applying, and this is also a recommendation. You know how when you go on LinkedIn and they'll tell you how many people have applied to the role, and sometimes it will say
Mm-hmm.
100, 200, 300, and you'll think, what's the point of me applying? For me, If you need to know anything about me, no is not anything that I register in my head. I don't register that word. So anything that's like, oh yeah, we're not accepting applications anymore. For me, it's like, oh, so you're gonna still accept my application. And this is the type of mindset that I bring to everything that I do. So I looked at the role and I saw what I just said. I saw that there was 100, 200 people that had applied, and the button to submit application wasn't working anymore. So I was like, how am I still gonna find a way to submit this application? So I said, let me do some digging. And I found who became my boss. I found her on the website, found her email address, and I sent my application materials to her directly. And I remember her saying, thank you so much for sending this directly because we were not looking at any more applications that were sent in the portal. And long story short, I was the one offered the fellowship. So if I didn't just not register no, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And this is the type of aggression that is required in, especially in health policy, is understanding that you sometimes can be your own barrier. You can sometimes be the one that closes doors for yourself because you maybe were not willing to just knock the door down. Like sometimes if a door is locked, someone will be like, okay, I'll just go home and I'll come back and try again. For me, the door can be locked. I'm coming back with something to break the door down and I will come inside. And that's just me. Again, I've said I've always been very ambitious from a young age, but I will say you don't have to be as aggressive as me, but I would say still have a mindset of whatever you want is achievable based on the amount of effort you're willing to put into it.
Okay, those are really good gems. I think okay, later on we're gonna talk about mindsets and rejections
Yeah.
and all of that. But even within the pivoting part time that you pivoted to policy, how did you navigate uncertainty about, would this work out, or like will like not knowing what exactly, you might do even in the new field, if that makes sense?
Hmm.
So, how did you navigate uncertainty? Because I think a lot of people are, sometimes when they pivot, they're like, I'm not really sure and it feels uncomfortable. How did
Yeah.
you navigate that?
For me, I don't think I would say I kept an open mind. I never had an area in health policy where I said, this is the area that I want to work in and I want to stay in this. A lot of people in health policy and also in other fields, they end up being an expert. So let's say if I stuck with maternal and child health, I would be an expert there. But I kind of dipped my toes in different areas. So I started with maternal and child health. Then I moved to health plans, quality measurement, digital health, and then I moved to aging and health policy, which is what I'm doing right now. So I didn't have any particular area that I was like, yeah, I want to stick here. So for me, that uncertainty didn't really come to the forefront because I kept an open mind. And I think sometimes not keeping an open mind can keep you in a box and prevent you from getting access to opportunities that could have your career soar. So that's something I always mention to people is I know we have the version of our career in our minds, but keeping an open mind will help you to reach success faster if you're able to be flexible with just how life works.
Open mindedness is key. Thank you. Okay, so kind of transitioning to leadership now. I was looking at your LinkedIn and I saw that, you talked about being a fellow in a nonprofit focused on maternal health and moving to a manager and then moving to a director, all in different positions. But what did you learn about leadership? I think a lot of people listening are in different fields, tech, public health, different finance and all of that. How did you navigate moving up the ladder? And also, what did you learn about leadership in that?
I'll start with your last question. I learned about leadership was actually that skill and knowledge does not translate to being a good leader. Somebody can be an expert in all things health policy, but that does not mean that they're going to be a good leader. A good leader requires they require emotional intelligence. It requires some type of understanding of human psychology. And I don't mean getting a whole degree in human psychology, but just understanding how people are. So, for example, for me, I don't really get offended too much in the workplace because I always remove myself from whatever the person is doing. So let's say if somebody is upset about whatever it is, for example, I remember I had a colleague that she was just very flustered and she ended up kind of blowing up on me when I asked her a question. I just asked her a question about an update, right? And she ended up saying, well, like she was just going off. And I was like, okay, I will come back. I think you need a moment. I will come back when you're ready to speak with me again. I could have taken offense that she yelled at me and she was doing all of this stuff, but I recognized that I did not do anything to you. So therefore, the response that you're giving to me does not have anything to do with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you time to regulate yourself. And so when you're ready to have a conversation where it doesn't involve you raising your voice, you let me know and I'll be back for that. Other people that will be like this. They'll be going back and forth like, well, who do you think you are? This is my position. This is what I need. And that happens in the workplace all the time. But I will say the major thing I understood about leadership is do not equate leadership with understanding, skill, and education. So that means even if somebody can have 10 PhDs, does not mean that they can be a good leader. Somebody can have 50 years of experience, does not mean that they can be a good leader. A good leader requires all of those things that I just mentioned and understanding how to deal with people. A good leader knows how to deal and navigate people, navigate different personalities, navigate different underlying issues in a way that is calm, is cool, is collected. And your first question, remind me, you said what was the trajectory from kind of fellow to manager to director?
Yeah.
The trajectory. So I always knew I wanted to be a director before I was 30. That was a goal that I set for myself, and it was something that I knew I could achieve. Even though I had people saying, "Oh, you're too young, nobody gets director positions by 30, like you need to go through all of these things." Again, I go back to saying no is non-existent for me. I don't care what you think I should do. I don't care what you have done in your past, in when you were coming up in your career. This is me and this is my career and I know what I'm capable of. So that's another thing I would mention to people is if you have others, which you're always going to have at least one person that is going to maybe try and discourage you from achieving something or reaching for the stars just because they're used to that being done in a certain way. It's very important for you to ignore that and continue the way that you're planning to. Because if I took the guidance from those people, I would have still been in a manager position and I turned 32 next month. I would have still been kind of just inching my way up. But because I had that internal confidence and I had that success mindset, all of it was like just background noise to me. For me, my parents are like my sounding boards. Anytime there was something, if they say I can do it, I'm like, who's anybody to tell me I can't do it? My parents said I can do it, so I'm doing
Mhm.
it.
Yes.
So I would say that has a lot to do with trajectory. The similarly, the reverse is sometimes you'll see people that are in their 40s or 50s still in a manager position. Sometimes people that's their preference and that's what they want, but other times people want to be in a higher position, but because they don't have that internal confidence, they don't have a way to fight for themselves and they don't position themselves in a way to enter director or vice president or above positions, they're going to remain in those positions. And we're always going to have people like that because this confidence thing is easier said than done. And you have to be willing to put in the work for it.
I love that. But with like a caveat to that is like you talked about achievement and setting goals, and there are some people in the audience listening, and they want to move up in their career. What would you say matters most? Would you say it's being really good at your job? It's knowing the right people? Is visibility? Or is it a combination of a few things, you would say?
It's a combination of a few things, and which thing matters the most depends on what level you are in your career. So I will say for entry level, the just basic skill is going to be expected. No one is expecting you to come in and be an expert at anything, but it's easier to get in at entry level. That's kind of the level where you'll have a lot of people that are happy and willing to connect you with individuals that maybe have opportunities at that entry level for you. So I would say networking and knowing people who you know is still going to be very important there. The mid-career level skill is, I think, the most important at that level, because when you're at mid-career, you're kind of in a sandwich. So you usually have people that are below you that are reporting to you, and then you have people above you that you're kind of managing or advising. So a lot of that requires you to have that expertise. You're often considered that expert or the person that is going to give that guidance with the necessary information to come with it. So for mid career, you can't really get away with not having the skill. It's going to be very difficult because of how much you're relied on in the workplace. Now, for let's say C suite, leadership level, executive level, that one I would say is heavy on the networking and the relationships that you have. There's a lot of people who do not have the knowledge, but they are in leadership positions because depending on the type of organization you are in, for example, for a corporate company, they may want somebody who is in the executive position that is going to represent the company at external events. So, what do they need? They need somebody who is a good public speaker. They need somebody who, and this may sound superficial, but they need somebody who presents well, who dresses well, who comes in, they command a room. They need somebody who knows how to network and have conversations with people. They need someone who's charming so that they can go and get money and sponsorships from other organizations, but they may not have the textbook knowledge or education of that topic, but they are in that position getting paid that much because of the value that they bring to the organization. So I would say understanding the value of what an organization or what an organization is looking for is going to help you to understand what is most important. If they are valuing publications, they're going to value the knowledge. They're going to value people who understand research. If they are trying to grow their business revenue, they're going to value somebody who can bring in money. So it doesn't matter if you know the topic at hand. It does matter if you're able to do negotiations and talk with people, develop relationships, and all of that. You can have zero knowledge, but if you're able to bring in $2 million for the company per year, you're gonna be there. You're gonna be there and you're not going anywhere. So it's important to understand how that differs depending on the type of organization that you're at.
That's really good. Just something I'm personally curious about. What has leadership revealed about yourself and like you personally? Like what has it taught you about yourself, I guess?
What has taught me about myself? I would say what I've learned is actually that I'm probably too nice. I'm probably too nice. I'm probably nicer than I should be. And what I mean, I don't mean that you need to be a mean person as a leader. I don't mean that. But I mean, in terms of maybe how I respond to some things, that's something that I'm working on improving is how to make my responses in a way that is this is what I'm saying versus I think this is good and I'm open to opinions and all of that. So I'm working on making that transition of this is what we're going to be doing and we're going to do it on this date and then remind myself that if people do have feedback, they will say it. But things like that, little things of how you respond, how you engage with people, how you present yourself, those are going to be key things in your leadership journey. And for me, I don't have any issues with coming in with confidence or let's say speaking with confidence, but it's little things like that where it's like, I want people to know that what I say is what I mean and that it's something that I'm standing on. So that's what I would say is maybe an area of focus for me that I plan to hone in on over the next few years.
Thanks for sharing. Um, kind of going into entrepreneurship and being a founder. So you're a founder of both Black in Health Policy and the Leave Consulting and Career Services. What is and you did that with an like a full time job, right?
Yes.
So how, like, what sparked the desire to start them? And because you have talked about Liv starting it and seeing during school, that's kind of what sparked it. But for Black in Health Policy, what sparked the desire and why was it important to you?
Black in Health Policy. So I'm the co-founder of that, and I founded it with my dear friend Michael Greer. And we have a funny story of how we met because he was coming into the organization and I was leaving, and we only had like a week or two together, but that week or two, I guess, was all we needed to build an organization like this. And the reason why we wanted to build Black and Health Policy was because a lot of us Black policy professionals in the DMV area, we recognized that there was really not a lot of spaces for all of us to come together. And the policy space in general has not been that diverse. And usually when we're going to events, it's either you're the only one or maybe one of a few Black people or just any other minority race. And we wanted to establish a community that could serve as a support, a foundation, but also, like I mentioned earlier, to expand the pipeline to leadership roles in health policy. So that means if somebody has a job opening at their role, you're coming back to Black and Health Policy, seeing, hey, this is opening. I want somebody in here to be in that role. If you're interested, let me know, because that's how things are done. And we wanted to make sure that we were supporting each other, that we were building each other up, and really creating something where we could collectively also influence policy, which we do plan to do over the next couple of years. But that was really the main driver of it. And when we started, there was no real plan or blueprint. The first gathering that we had was in 2023 at Swahili Village they have like a corner room, and I remember we were all just packed in there. It was very hot. All of us were probably sweating, but we had a good time. We had a good time just being around each other, seeing that many Black health policy professionals in one room. So this day, it's something that I will never forget because I had never seen it before. And it made me realize, wow, yeah, this is something that we definitely need to do because people left feeling filled. They left feeling like I could show up as 100% myself in this space and also talk about policy, but I don't have to put on my 9 to 5 hat in this space. I don't have to be conscious about certain things. So that was really kind of like an aha moment of this was something that we needed for a very long time. Since then, we've been able to do 2 Congressional Black Caucus receptions and have invited members of Congress to come, as well as former administration officials and presidential appointed officials and things like that. So it's something I'm really excited about because a lot of people have been asking or hoping for something like this. And finally, we do have it. And it's been amazing seeing how it has grown over the past 3 years now. So I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
Congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so you talked about, like, you've mentioned a few people who you've built with. How do you find the right people, I guess, to build with, and like how important is it?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have the perfect answer for that, but it's like when and they say
Mm,
that for marriage too, like when you know. And it's kind of like that because it's a partnership and you don't want to be in partnership with people who are going to leave you on red or not communicate with you or kind of put all the work on you. So I think it's something where if you feel like you're in a groove with a person and you're coming to a point where you're comfortable with saying, yeah, let's go into something together, then go for it. That could be somebody that you met in 6 months or somebody that you've known for 15 years. But one thing doesn't how am I trying to say this? Just because one thing is true doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be successful. So let me kind of rephrase this. Just because you know somebody for 15 years doesn't mean that going into partnership with them is going to be successful. And just because you know somebody for 6 months doesn't mean that going into partnership with them is going to be unsuccessful. So knowing that it's about people, it's about the quality of the person that you are engaging with, Sometimes it really doesn't matter the amount of time that you know them, but it matters what their intentionality is and if they're willing to be dedicated to the topic at hand or the initiative that you're trying to build.
That's really good. So it doesn't matter how long, it just matters the quality.
Mm-hmm.
For what advice would you give to students or early career professionals who it's a full time job but want to start their own initiative or organization? Well, what are the like mindset to have or like the things to look out for?
Number one, I would say if you want to start something, don't think too hard about it. A lot of times when you want to start something, you're thinking, well, I need to get all of these things in place and I need to do this, and this. And before you know it, it's been 5 years since you said that you wanted to start this thing. That's how we can get in the way of ourselves. I will say I started my business. I did not do any MBA. I did not do any business administration classes. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I started with a link tree and I don't even know. Like I'm just looking at when I started, I'm like, yeah, we we had a lot to learn. But I started and now
Yeah.
we're in our 5th year of business. And if I didn't start 5 years ago, I wouldn't know what I know now. And I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. Anybody who has started anything, whether it's a business, nonprofit, foundation, initiative, program, if they say that they've never made any mistakes, they are lying to you. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody is perfect. Nobody has the perfect blueprint. And I would say just make sure that you're willing to invest in that program or initiative. And when I say invest, I'm not necessarily talking about financial investment, even though we know that's necessary, but I'm talking about mental and emotional investment. A lot of times, especially if you're working full time like me, I had to do a lot of my evenings were completely taken up with the business. And sometimes I would be staying up until 3, 4 a.m. working on these things, trying to get things going and just running on lack of sleep. And I'm doing much better with that now because now I know delegation and putting in automation systems and things like that to free up my time. But I would say in those first couple of years, you have to be willing to grind it out. And that's where a lot of people kind of miss the mark, and that's kind of the difference between the people who will succeed and the people who won't. If you're not willing to keep pushing in your business or your initiative or your program, you have to ask yourself, do you really want to do this? Because there's a different level of dedication that is required that in my opinion is more than the dedication required for a 9 to 5 job, because it's something that you're building. Nobody's going to be around you holding you accountable saying, hey, I didn't see that you sent this email. You have to be that person for yourself. For a 9 to 5 job, if you don't show up to work, they're gonna say, hey, we didn't see you. For your business, you can not show up for work for 3 months. Nobody's gonna say anything because it's your business. So having the understanding of, are you ready to hold yourself accountable first before you start something is a very important question. And then two, asking yourself, how much time are you willing to dedicate to this? And once you have all of those questions answered, just move. My motto is just move. Things will fall in place. You can learn as you go, but don't feel like you have to have everything perfect before you decide to launch something.
That's really good. So moving to our like a final segment, want to talk about mindsets. I think when we talk about building a career that is meaningful or that matters, I think many times it's good to have these goals, but oftentimes we don't anticipate opposition, whether internal limiting beliefs or, just external opposition too.
Yeah.
What are some of the limiting beliefs that you've had to overcome and like how important is self-belief really?
Self belief is one of the most important things ever, if not the most important thing when it comes to your career. Because if you do not believe in yourself, trust me, other people see it and they will treat you as such. And what I mean by that is, for example, coming in, let's say if you're offered a salary, I always tell every single one of my clients, negotiate your salary. I don't care if you asked for 200,000 in your cover letter and they offered you 250,000. You're probably like, "Wow, great. This is more than what I asked for." Still negotiate, because it's not just about getting more money, It's about setting the tone for how that company should be treating you. If they see that you did not negotiate the salary, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is this is somebody that we can just kind of play around with." And they will just take it. And that is what happens a lot of times when you do not have that self-belief, when it's not clear. Other companies, they will take advantage of that. So it's important that you have that and that you're unapologetic about it. Again, I can say this, it's not every single person that will apply it. It's not every single person that unfortunately will be successful in trying to get that self-belief. But trust me, I've spoken with hundreds, if not thousands of people now, and age does not matter when it comes to this. I've seen extremely confident people at 20, and people who are still not confident at 60. And the age, it doesn't matter. All that matters is here. And this is why we really pride ourselves in delivering comprehensive career services. So that's not just what are you interested in as a career, that's who are you? Who are you as a person? What do you like? I always ask the question of, if I were to talk to your friends and family, what would they say about you? What would they say that is one of your great skills? Do they say that you're a person that gets things done? Are you a person that you handle conflict well? For example, my family, they know I'm a planner. I am a planner through and through. Anything you want, if you want something to be planned well and planned in a quality way, people know to come to me for that. And that translates to my job. And people don't think that what they have naturally is something that can translate into a job. So self-belief, number one thing that is going to make or break your career. If you don't have it, I don't know what to tell you. Well, I do know what to tell you, but it's up to you if you want to apply it. And the other question, remind me, what was the second one, please?
What are some limiting beliefs that you've had to overcome in the your career path?
Limiting beliefs may be one that, give me a moment, let me think of this one. This may not be a limiting belief, but I will say something that I had to get a better understanding of, or something that I had to maybe learn the hard way, is that even if you do have good ideas, it depends on the company that you're working with. Sometimes those ideas, somebody will take it, sometimes they won't. And that doesn't mean that you are not good at your job. It doesn't mean that your recommendation doesn't matter. But sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with you. So understanding that and not taking a personal offense when your idea is not implemented, I think is something that's very important to know as you're going into the roles.
It's really good. You've talked about like, non-traditional career path or like non-linear. I think a lot
Mhm.
of us are realizing right now that career paths are non-linear. What are some of the mindsets you think are necessary to thrive in that non-linear, not traditional path that we all find ourselves in right now?
That open mindedness is going to be it. Yeah. I think that when you kind of let go of the idea of career path that you've had for yourself, it allows for other opportunities and blessings, per se, to come and drop in your life. Having kind of the tunnel vision for career really does a disservice, and it doesn't help you to reach the goal, because you can sit here and think that you want to be, for example, a doctor. But maybe your goal was, or the path that is for your life is to be the owner of a football team. Like, I don't know. We don't know these things, but you have to take the time to learn yourself and kind of inch your way to getting there. And for me, I will say I'm a Christian. I pray. I love God. And if you are too, I would highlight that understanding that relationship and kind of listening and following the path that God has for you is very important. I've done that for myself, and the peace that I have in knowing that I am in the path that I'm supposed to be in. There's nothing that I'm afraid of when it comes to my career. If I apply for something and I don't get it, oh well, it wasn't meant for me. But I know that either way, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so therefore, nobody has the power to disrupt that. Having that internal peace helps me to just do things in a way that is comfortable for me and do things in a way that will lead to success. So I know that's easier said than done, but a lot of this career success, yes, has to do with who you know and who's able to help you out. But also the other half of it is having the understanding of what you're supposed to be doing and having that clarity for yourself and knowing that the road that is yours cannot be destroyed, it cannot be blocked, it cannot be impacted by anybody else because it's your road. And when you understand that, it's much easier to stick on it and just move forward, get things done, and block out all of the noise.
Thank you so much. Second to the last thing we're going to talk about is you've talked about, how you don't register no's and you just seeing rejections as kind of maybe a redirection.
Yeah.
How how would you advise people or like, student area career professionals and how to navigate rejection and not take no as no?
This is a tough one because even though I don't register no's, I'm not going to lie and say that I haven't received a no that hurt me before. And I remember there was a job that I really, really wanted. And this was in the pandemic and I did all the interviews. It was actually a job on Capitol Hill as a health policy fellow. I so badly wanted to work on the Hill, and I was like, this is my chance. Everything's working great. I did an in person interview. And then guess what? A week after the interview, COVID. And I was like, well, whatever. They loved me anyway, so COVID is not going to interrupt this. Then silence. 1 week passed, nothing. Another week passed, nothing. And I started to get that anxiety like, are they still going to pick me? I don't know. So finally, I got the email from them and they said, hey, we loved your experience, but unfortunately, we need to go with somebody who has more of an infectious disease background. And I was crushed. I was crushed because when you do that thing of show me a sign that this is for me, I was creating signs for myself. I was like, that star, yeah, that's the one for this. You see
Yeah.
that sun, the way it's shining? Yeah, I think I'm gonna get this. I was creating scenarios in my head so bad because I wanted it so bad. And that was a no that till this day I will never forget it. But I say that to say getting no's is normal. Feeling or getting rejections are normal, especially now in the public health job market where that's people's daily life. People are getting more no's than they are for yes, and it's like a constant thing that does something to your psyche when you're constantly getting rejections. And I will say, if you need to take a break from that, take a break, because if you don't understand the type of psychological impact that that has on you, you may find yourself in a state of depression or a state of anxiety. And this is reality because I've had so many conversations with people that were talking about their career and the call is ending in tears because people are so hurt and run down by the job search process that they don't have any energy left. So I will say when it comes to rejections, this is easier said than done. And I will never tell anybody don't feel the rejection or the rejection shouldn't be something that impacts you. But what I would say is whenever you feel that the rejections are getting too much, don't be afraid to take a step back, take some time for yourself, regroup, and re enter when you're ready to do so. Because otherwise, it may be an uphill battle for you going forward. And you don't want to lose that confidence that you already have, all of the excitement that you have for the field. It's important to take some time and just step away from that. But rejections are real and they hurt and nobody likes to receive them, but it's a reality of the career and definitely now, especially with the public health job market.
So that's very relevant for a lot of people right now. Just for final thoughts on just do you have any final thoughts on building a career that matters and it's meaningful for our audience?
Be unapologetic about what you want to do. That is my advice. And what I mean by that is if you want a career in public health, go after it. Do not wait for somebody to reach out to you with a job. Do not wait for somebody to connect you with a person. Do not wait for the perfect internship to be posted. Something I didn't mention earlier is if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I have maybe 3 or so internships at hospitals. Those were not internships that were posted. I went on the websites, I found doctors that I would be interested in working with, and I asked them, Would you be willing to take me on as an intern? Do you know how many people told me no? There's so many. I can't remember. I don't remember their names. This was over 10 years ago. But it was the people that said yes to me. Now I had an internship. Now I have this experience on my resume. So what I would say is take things into your own hands. Don't wait for things to be in place. There's so many resources that we have, especially now. There's so many things that you can utilize to make things work for you. So I would say be unapologetic about it, be aggressive about it, and just make sure that you don't allow anybody to discourage you on this. I know public health is very difficult right now, but if you're considering or if you're thinking maybe I got into the wrong field, you didn't. We need you still. This is a hard time, but trust me, this is still an area where you can have a lot of success. Just how you get to that success is going to look a little different than it has been in the past couple of years.
Wow. Thank you so, so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure our audience too enjoyed it. And so, yeah, if anyone has any comments, please put them down in the chat box below. And yeah, this is the end of the episode. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.